Hello seedlings, saplings and climbers. I hope you've all been having really good weeks with your families, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you when we get back to Grace Church and hearing all of your news. Now, before we hear this week's story, we're going to think back to last week and see how much we can remember about the story we heard about God's growing kingdom. Last week we looked at mustard seeds, didn't we? And I'm sure you can all remember how tiny the little mustard seeds we were shown were. So my first question for you all is, what was the seed in the story? And if you said that the seed was the good news about Jesus, then you are correct. And my second question is, how did it grow? And if you said all by itself, then you are correct. And finally, how big did the seed get? And you're right if you said that the seed got much bigger than they expected, didn't it? We saw last week how a tiny mustard seed turns into a massive tree when it grows, doesn't it? And we can tell people about Jesus, and even if that feels small and insignificant at the time, we know that God will use this to grow his kingdom and bring other people into it. Now today, before we hear the story for this week, we're going to play a game to get us thinking about the things that we are afraid of. We're now going to play a game to think about the things that we are scared of. I have a list of some scary things, and I'd like you to pretend that this side of your room is a little bit scared and this side of your room is very scared. And when I call off these scary things, you need to run to one side or the other side of the room, depending if you're just a little bit scared or very scared, or you can stand somewhere in between. So the first scary thing is spiders. Are you just a little bit scared of spiders, or are you very scared of spiders? The second is jellyfish. How scared are you of jellyfish? Now the third scary thing is the dark. Are you just a little bit scared of the dark, or are you very, very scared of the dark? And how scared are you of stinging nettles? How scared are you of sharks? Do you find sharks just a little bit scary, or do you find them very scary? How scared are you of heights? And finally, how scared are you of snakes? Are you just a little bit scared of snakes, or are you very scared of them? Now I hope that got us thinking about all the different things that we are scared of. Maybe some things some of you found more scary than others, or maybe there were things that you didn't find very scary at all, but others that you found very scary. In today's Bible story, we're going to look at a time where the disciples were very, very scared, and how Jesus responded to them when they asked him for help. On the evening of that same day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they left the crowd. The disciples got into the boat in which Jesus was already sitting, and they took him with them. Other boats were there too. Suddenly, a strong wind blew up, and the waves began to spill over into the boat, so that it was about to fill with water. Jesus was in the back of the boat, sleeping with his head on a pillow. The disciples woke him up and said, "Teacher, don't you care that we're about to die?" Jesus stood up and commanded the wind,
"Be quiet!"
And he said to the waves,
"Be still!"
The wind died down, and there was a great calm. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Why are you frightened? Have you still no faith?" But they were terribly afraid and said to one another, "Who is this man? Even the wind and the waves obey him." This story shows us that the disciples were terrified of the storm. They worked as fishermen, and they would have been used to big storms on the lake, but this one was so big that they were scared and they were desperate for help. But the disciples thought that Jesus didn't care about them, as he was sleeping in the boat during this frightening storm. But Jesus does have the power to help us because he is God and he does care for us. And because he is God, he knows exactly what we're going through and will always do what's best for us. Jesus can calm the wind and the waves just by speaking, and this shows that he is God and completely in control. And we can trust Jesus that he loves us and that he always wants to help us. And we can pray to Jesus when we feel scared or sad and know that he will help us, even if that isn't always in the ways that we expect. So what can we do when we feel afraid or sad? We can pray to Jesus, who is powerful enough to calm the storms and who cares for us. So let's pray now. Dear God, thank you that you are completely in control and that we can pray to you when we are afraid or sad because you are God and powerful enough to calm the storms. Amen. This week's craft activity retells us the story that we've learned about Jesus calming the storm. You can see that it starts with the disciples looking terrified. We've got the waves, we've got the wind, the rain. But then we see what happens when Jesus tells the wind to be quiet and the waves to be still. And maybe you can use this to tell your families the story. And we can use this to remind ourselves that Jesus can calm the storms because he is God.